Welcome to this week's edition of the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by our good friends at Robbins Motor Company. I am GoPowercat publisher Tim Fitzgerald, and over the next hour, we'll try to get you ready for Texas Tech and Kansas State on Saturday night at 6 p.m. in Lubbock. The game's televised on FS1. We'll also try to unravel a little bit further what happened to K-State in last week's 29-21 loss at Oklahoma State, a very unexpected loss, but more so a really unexpected performance by a K-State team that seemed to be finding itself after that loss at Missouri with a convincing win over UCF, and then everything was different at Oklahoma State. We've done a lot of that breakdown on the GoPowercat channel so far this week. We'll delve into it a little bit more with our football analyst, Brien Hanley. He was an offensive lineman on those K-State teams in 97 and 98 that were so important to the growth of the program. And then we'll go to Ryan Wallace, our expert on so many things, and he'll help us breaking down Texas Tech, and we'll get into that pretty deep with him. And, of course, we'll end up with Ryan Gilbert to talk about the sports betting lines that are available this week. Only 5 Big 12 games, so we'll be a little bit shorter with Gills this week, but still some important games out there in the Big 12. And as I mentioned, we're sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. At Robbins Motor Company, they strive to earn lifetime business and build relationships selling quality cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs, and offering top-notch parts and service. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. Kansas State is 3-2 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Tech has one more game under its belt. They're 3-3 overall, but they're 2-1 in the conference. And if either one of these teams wants to, get deep into the conversation about the top teams in the Big 12, they need to win this game. And K-State knows that very well. And one of the things before we get to Brien Hanley that we're going to do in this show is talk to Chris Kleiman a little bit and also talk to Will Howard. We're going to start here with Chris Kleiman discussing what went wrong with his quarterback on Saturday. And keep in mind, or on Friday, and keep in mind that Will Howard is not a quarterback that has traditionally thrown interceptions, but boy, he threw 3 at Oklahoma State. It was troubling, but we'll see what Chris Kleiman has to say right here.
He's got to take care of the ball better. And I like him to be aggressive, but he can't be, to a point where it's putting the team and the offense at risk. And there was a couple of throws, last week that absolutely he knows he can't make. He hasn't made those in the past, to your point. We believe in Will. Let's not forget he helped us win a Big 12 championship, so we're not going to give up on him like I think people want us to. And we've got a guy that's running that room that's knows what he's doing in Colin Klein. And I love CK. Got a ton of faith in Colin Klein, as everybody else should, being K-Staters, and we'll get this figured out.
And now it is time to speak with Brien Hanley, our football analyst, one of our football analysts at GoPowercat. I feel like I just talked to you a couple days ago, Brien, on the inside. I like this, having to get to talk to you twice a week. It's good.
It is good. It's fun.
We covered a lot of this in the Insiders, but let's go a little bit deeper.
Sure.
What's more troubling here is if this was what happened at Oklahoma State, if that was a player issue of lack of motivation and effort and just not being focused, or a schematic issue in which Oklahoma State discovered some things seriously wrong with K-State's defense. Oklahoma State ran the ball with success, which is the first team to do that. They really dissected K-State quite a bit with slant routes as they backed off. What's more troubling, if this was a mental problem, the players aren't invested, or if this was a schematic issue?
It's a mental problem for me.
Really?
Because the thing about it is you can fix schematics.
Right.
You can fix that. Mental issues and effort, that's tough to fix in a week, especially, without just replacing a whole bunch of people. That's where the problem comes in, is that you're trying, if it's effort, you just can't replace that in a week without just playing new people. You know, schematics can be fixed. Heck, you can fix schematics on the sideline. You know, if it's that big of a deal, you can do. Now, we didn't do that against Oklahoma State, which was troubling. We didn't do that, but you can literally fix that in game on a sideline at the half, whatever. So I think the more pressing issue is the guys. Hopefully this it was more of a, hey, we're going to roll in here and win, you know, and even that's not acceptable, but let's hope that it's just that, Fitz, because if it's, you know, I'm an entitled, we're just better, we don't have to work hard. If it's that kind of thing, which we haven't seen from this team lately, or, you know, any K-State teams lately, then that's a problem.
That should even be a problem at Kansas State.
No.
At what point did Kansas State decide we can just roll in anywhere in this conference and win? And I hope that's not the case. I hope the guys realized that whatever they did just didn't quite work. But I will say this, we discussed this also on the Insiders, but I come back to it because it's so confounding to me, dumbfounding. A lot of the problems were with seniors.
Yeah.
I mean, Will Howard was out of sorts. We had a bad snap between him and his senior center. We had some real confusion on a pass route between a 6-year senior Phillip Brooks and the quarterback. I get young guys. Austin Romaine might struggle at middle linebacker once in a while. Some of the other young guys might struggle. But if you're a senior, particularly like a 6-year, this should be old hat. You never run a wrong pattern. You never miss a block. You never jog. You're just trained to do it the right way.
Yeah, that was troubling.
Yeah.
It was troubling. You know, a lot of that, and I'm just going to attribute it to guys just not being ready to play, not being prepared to play, you know, and just going through the motions, just think, hey, we can just flip a switch, kind of what we talked about on the Insiders, that guys just think, oh, yeah, it's not going good. We're just going to flip a switch and we're just going to overwhelm them. Sorry. I mean, as good as I think that we are, as good a football team that we don't have those type of athletes that we can just flip a switch no matter how the game is going and just go overwhelm somebody. We can beat somebody down. We can do that, but it's a gradual thing. We're not just flipping switches and throwing up, you know, 30 points in a quarter on somebody. That's not how Kansas State football is. It's never been that way.
No.
At least not in a long, long time. So it's kind of a grind it out, beat you into the dirt, you know, and that's good. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think we just got a little bit full of ourselves, Fitz. I believe that's what it was. The guys just got full of themselves and thought we could just roll in, and no matter what we did, whether we played good or bad, we were going to win the football game, and they got caught.
They did. They absolutely got caught, and they couldn't get themselves out of it. Even in the last possessions of the game, they just weren't very efficient. But if you want an example of how a team responds to some early losses, of course, Tech opened up at Wyoming. Little did we know that wasn't a bad loss. It's almost the equivalent of the K-State Tulane game last year. Wyoming is unbeaten and on course to end up in a New Year's Six bowl. Then they played number 13 Oregon to one score, 38-30, losing in Lubbock. Then they rolled Tarleton State, of course, lose to West Virginia. And we thought at the time, oh boy, Tech's really in trouble. They lost to West Virginia. It turns out West Virginia is pretty good.
Yep.
Then they play Houston. They win that. Then last week, this one really caught my attention, though. They went to Baylor, and I know Baylor's struggling, but they absolutely rolled the Bears in Waco, 39-14. And they look like a much better team. And I don't think it was just Baylor doing it to them. I think they've got themselves pulled together as a unit. What has changed for Texas Tech, and how dangerous is this team?
I think one thing that changed is I think they circled the wagons. I think maybe a little bit early, the same thing happened to them. Everybody was talking about how good they were supposed to be, and they came out of the gates and got punched directly in the mouth, and they had no idea how to answer because everybody had spent all offseason and preseason telling them how good they were going to be, and they were going to be in the Big 12 championship. And when adversity came, they had no clue, just absolutely no clue. And then they had to look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, this is where we are. If we're going to fight out of this, we got to start now. We have to go back to being who we were last year and fight. And they've done that. And that's the mark of having a good coach. Now, you could also flip that and say, well, why didn't the coach have them ready to play at the beginning of the season? And I get that, and that's valid. That is absolutely valid. But they're playing well now. They figured some things out. Again, they've got a lot of things in front of them. So it's just a matter of them continuing down that path. This is going to be a tough game for K-State. It just is.
Yes. Yeah, K-State's, after being an 11-point road favorite last week at Oklahoma State, that worked out great. They're now a 1.5 road dog, which I understand. And Tech's gone through their own evolution. They lost their starting quarterback. Now they have a young guy, Baron Morton, starting. Looked pretty good. He was 19 of 26 last weekend. 180 yards, through 3 TDs, though. They seem to have found a little bit better offensive identity right now, but the leader of this new identity is Taj Brooks. 31 carries for 170. It looked a lot like DJ Giddens against UCF, but he just rolled through that defense at Baylor. And I would normally have said, or earlier in the season, I said, that's not a worry for K-State. They stopped the run, but boy, they didn't stop the run very well at Oklahoma State. Taj Brooks is going to be a problem. He's a bowling ball that keeps going forward.
Yeah, that's my worry, is that they found something in K-State's defense. And again, it can be fixed, but they're running the ball really well. Texas Tech is. And I just have a feeling with some of the injuries that we've had, it's going to be a problem. K-State's going to have to come up with something schematic-wise to be able to slow the running game down and make them one-dimensional. Make them have to throw the ball. Anytime they try to run it. That's where K-State got in trouble at Oklahoma State, is that we could never, we couldn't stop them from running the football. And when we couldn't stop them from running the football, then our cornerbacks were playing so far off that the slants were just, the RPO game, it was wide open. And that's something that's got to stop. That's something that's just got to change, because if not, Tech's going to have 600 yards of offense, and it's going to be a long day.
And then they'll go to the second quarter. I appreciate that K-State is working on some injury situations on the defense side of the ball. They might play this game without their starting cornerbacks, which is not good.
All right.
So now Chris Kleiman's in this interesting balance. I think Joe Klanderman was backing his guys up, trying to prevent the explosive play, which has been a problem for K-State, trying to make sure he's safeguarding against those unproven corners getting torched. But Chris Kleiman's like, we can't defend this way. This is not how we're going to defend. And I feel like there's going to be explosive plays in this game. But I much rather, honestly, if your defense for me is going to give up something, I much rather give up the explosive play, get the ball back and respond and get a rhythm to the game, rather than slowly getting bled out like Oklahoma State did so masterfully from the first drive on. 15 plays, touchdown. That's torture. Yes. I'd rather give up the explosive. I know coaches don't want to, but what they did at Oklahoma State just sucked the life out of everyone, and fans, coaches, the players, of course. You're going to have to attack with your defense, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. And if that means stopping the run to put an extra safety down there, or changing the line of scrimmage and put 4 guys down linemen and go to a more conventional, maybe a 4-2 look or even a 4-3 look, then that's what you have to do. Tech's going to spread them out, so don't get me wrong, but you know what? Make them complete the passes over top of you if that's what's going to happen. Make them do it. Now, granted, you can't be running 3 yards behind receivers and stuff like that, so because that becomes pitch and catch. That makes it easy. So you got to make it a little bit difficult for them, but make them complete the passes. Make them do it. Don't just give them slant routes that turn into 8 yards, that turn into 13 yards. Don't give that to them. Make them complete stuff over your head down the field. And if they do it, they do it. But that's why they call them high or low percentage passes, because they're literally low percentage. And if we just can, but a slant route on an RPO where our guy's 8 yards off the wide receiver, I mean, that's basically 7-on-7 with no defenders. So we can't just continue to do that, because you're not defending at all. Coach Kleiman is right. You can't defend that way, and you're literally not defending when you're doing that. You're just hoping and wishing at that point.
Offensively for Kansas State, boy, brother, your soulmates on the offensive line played a bad game. They just didn't put it together. They didn't look physical. They didn't look like they were on the attack, and that kind of set in motion everything that K-State did or didn't do on offense. K-State's just got to get back to basics for them, which is, physically run the ball and get the pass game going. But here's my question for you. What is the state, in your opinion, of Kansas State's wide receivers? I think they're in trouble at wide receiver. They just don't have guys that are stepping up to make plays.
That's the problem. I mean, everybody wants to mask it and say this or that. We just got to be honest. The wide receiver room is not good. It's just not. And the guy that they were counting on, Keegan Johnson, to be that guy. I mean, is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Is he going to play? Can he play a half? I just don't understand that. And I know I harp on that, and maybe people keep getting tired of me saying it, but I'm going to continue to say it. I don't see how you can play a half of football and then not play another half.
Yeah.
Either it hurts all game or it doesn't hurt. So I just don't get that. But either way, even besides that, you have to get guys that can go and catch balls outside the numbers. We just don't and can catch the ball down the field, be able to run a 12-yard comeback and catch the ball outside. That we just don't possess those type of guys, and it's becoming a problem, and teams know it. That's where the issue is that teams know it now, and they just load up. But also, they didn't get help. The offensive line didn't play great until late in the game when we ran it, but they're not getting help from the sideline. If you can't trust, and I mentioned this on the Insiders, if you can't trust your senior quarterback to check when it's 2nd and 8 versus a 4-man box or a 5-man box for him to check to a run, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
And there were so many times in that game where it was 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9. There were times where Oklahoma State literally had 4 guys in the box. And I was screaming. My wife got tired of hearing me screaming at the television, check to a run. Just run the football. And we did not do it. I could see if our passing game was going great. Okay, fine. But since it was going lousy, I'm just run the ball. You have more people there to block, just run it. And I don't know, it just didn't happen. It was just a bad game all the way around. But I think the offensive line, it's got to start with them. They've got to play well. They just got to come off the ball and be physical. Just be physical. Enough of the side-to-side running that we seem to be in love with. Run the ball downhill and get after them. Just get after them.
I agree. That was well said. I mean, just for me, it's just flip that switch mentally and do whatever you're doing with a little bit more passion. Because you're not. I got news for them, and they learned this. Hopefully, you're not good enough to go through the motions.
No.
Let's be honest. Oklahoma State played better than they have. Their coaches certainly put the players in a better position than K-State coaches put theirs. I believe that. But Oklahoma State's still not good. As bad as K-State was, they've got the ball with a chance to tie the game in the fourth quarter. And they're sleepwalking and still in the game. Unfortunately, they sleptwalked through their last 2 possessions and didn't get anything done. But I guess the question that hovers over this game as that 6 p.m. kickoff nears on Saturday night, did K-State learn its lesson? Or is this just a schematic collapse of the program for this season? I honestly, Brien, I think we're going to find out quickly in this game.
I 100% agree with you, Fitz. We are going to find out early what we're made of. I don't think it's a schematic issue. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that the coaching staff doesn't understand where they went wrong. It's just, they're not a bunch of dumb guys up there. So I got to believe that they looked at this and just thought, you know what, blame me. We'll be more physical on both sides of the ball, and we are going to change what we are doing. It was almost like we're hurt. We're playing against this team that we don't think is very good. Let's just get through this game, get a win, and then let's get on to the next one. Well, then you got bit because that's exactly not only it looked like the coaching staff felt like that, and it oozed down to the players. And so then the players felt like that. Well, you got to stop that. You got to stop it immediately. Go out, put your best foot forward at all times, and just battle this one out, because we're going to find, like you said, we're going to find out early, because I think Tech is going to come and try to hit us in the mouth early and knock us completely out. They are coming for K-State's heart, and it's going to be up to us to protect our heart and to fight back. And we're going to find, and I'm excited for that. And players should be excited for that, and fans. We should all be excited to see what we're made of. We literally got knocked down. We are standing 8 count. We're staggering. What are we going to do?
Well put. Does K-State get this done?
I think so. I do. I just believe, first of all, I think we're better than Tech. Right. That's number one. And early in the season, have we been undefeated? This was a game that I had circled that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if K-State, but now the circumstances have changed. And I believe that if we lose this game, I think the kids and the staff know the season's off the rails if we lose this football game. And I just believe that the fight is going to be there. I just believe the fight's going to be there. If it's not, then I've totally misjudged who we have in the locker room.
Right. That's perfectly said. I've totally misjudged the character of this team, the way the coaches are handling this team. This is a reset game.
Yes.
K-State wins, they reset. They're not they're not back to the same pace they were, because that Oklahoma State game should be a win in the, if you want to talk about resets. But they're back on schedule because Texas lost to Oklahoma. You still control your own destiny. That's reset one. If they lose this game, it resets what we all expected, including inside that locker room, for Kansas State football in 2023, and adjusts it to be, hey, maybe they're a 7-5 team. Maybe they're 8-4, but they're not Big 12 caliber championship. They're just not. They're just not there. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about this team Saturday night in Lubbock.
Yeah, that would be disappointing to not put our best foot forward, because if we put our best foot forward, we beat Tech. Just period, point blank. If we put our best foot forward, we win the football game.
Right.
If we don't, they're going to beat us.
Yep. His name is Brien Hanley. He does a lot of stuff for us at GoPowercat. We appreciate it. But Brien, you also do a lot of your own stuff at your YouTube channel. Please, everyone, go subscribe to Brien's YouTube channel and find him on your social media platforms. Give us a rundown of what the Brien Hanley creation schedule is for a week.
It is basically, I do a live stream at 4 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday on Big B Sports Talk on YouTube. Go subscribe to that.
Yes.
We talk about a lot of different stuff. We have a fraud of the week that we do every Tuesday. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, we've got a lot of people. We're live on TikTok as well. We're just trying to build it, Fitz, a little bit of a time. I know you got my partner, Darren Howard, another K-Stater. I've been best friends with him for 25 years. So we do it together. He's behind the scenes. I'm in front of the camera. We love it that way. We are just trying to build this thing and have a lot of fun. There's a ton of K-Staters that come over and get in every day too. Nice. So there's a lot of K-Staters that have joined on TikTok and on YouTube. So it's starting to get fun.
He is Brien Hanley, and he is the real deal. Brien, I appreciate it so very much. As we go into break here, Ryan Wallace awaits on the other side, but also a little treat for you later in the show. We're going to actually bring in an interview, because I think it's important for everyone to hear what Will Howard had to say on Tuesday at the press conference after having a few days to absorb what happened as a quarterback, as a team. And we will have Will Howard later in the show. But until then, let's head into break on the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. Welcome back to the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. I'm GoPowercat's Tim Fitzgerald. That was Brien Hanley before the break, discussing everything going on with his football program as the Cats head into Texas Tech on Saturday night for a 6 p.m. kick. And our Ryan Wallace is standing by to get into more of the Red Raiders and really kind of look back and try to decipher what the heck happened to the Wildcats at Stillwater last week. And Remember, we're sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. The dedicated team of automotive professionals at Robbins Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat will match you with a vehicle that suits your lifestyle and budget. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. Ryan Wallace is standing by, but so much went wrong last week in Stillwater as Kansas State prepares now for the Red Raiders, a team that is surging. They're 3-3 overall on the season after opening up the season with two tough games, as it turns out, at Wyoming and against Oregon. Now they've settled in a little bit at 2-1 in the conference. For K-State, last week was really troubling, and here's what Chris Kleiman believes K-State needs to do. Let's get back to basics. We'll get to Ryan Wallace right after this.
Well, that's part of what our issue is across the board. We didn't block well enough on offense. We didn't tackle well enough. So, yeah, we need to just get back to some basic stuff. That's why we talked as a staff on Saturday and Sunday about trying to simplify some of our plans offensively and defense and even on special teams so that the kids can play with more confidence and play with better technique. Today we'll do a little bit more good on good than we've probably done in the last couple of weeks, going the ones against the ones. Part of that is having that extra day because it's and the fact we came off of a bye week. It's hard to do that in week 9, 10, and 11, or 8, 9, 10 when guys are just beat to heck after a ball game. We've had a couple of days to rest, and I think our guys are at least fresh.
And now there he is, Mr. Ryan Wallace, our recruiting expert at GoPowercat, but so much more, Ryan Wallace. You're so much more, as you've got kind of the scout on Texas Tech. First, let's back up. Let's talk about what went wrong. I asked Brien Hanley.
Do we have to?
Yes, yes. Sometimes you got to brush your teeth twice in a day. I asked Brien Hanley this. Was this a mental issue where they weren't checked in, or a schematic issue where Oklahoma State exposed some things? And which would be worse? Which was it, and which is worse?
Oh, I think part one would be way worse. I probably think it's a little bit twofold. Clearly they figured some things out in the second half. I mean, in a weird way, though you watched the whole game and you kind of thought K-State was never really in it. They were in it until the very end. And I think they got caught off guard early on defense from a schematic point of view. Like none of us saw Alan Bowman scrambling to keep drives alive as being part of the key to Oklahoma State's early offensive success. So I definitely think there were some things there. But I think more than not, and I think it's been this way in the losses and maybe even, some of the wins like UCF, it's just been a lot of misexecution. Just I don't fault, I think, the coaches nearly as much as some of the fan base does. I just think you've got a lot of players that are either inexperienced or new to this program that are still learning. Whereas last year you had a lot of guys that even the ones that were new to the program were seasoned beyond belief, like a Drake Cheatham, Josh Hayes guys that, they weren't trying to learn the system as much as they were each day of the week, getting into nuances of the opponent and stuff that they were able to play faster. And so I think it was definitely more misexecution, but I think on offense, it would be hard to argue against. There was I don't want to call it loafing, but there was a different kind of mentality that was just off on offense. And I don't think that spread through the entire team. And I don't think it's a problem moving forward. I really don't. But for whatever reason, Fitz, that was a weird Friday night deal that I hope to never see again from Kansas State.
Yeah, it was odd. Watching guys just break off patterns because they don't think they're going to get the ball, jogging through stuff. There was no fire. There just was no fire, and schematics went wrong. Okay, what do you see from Texas Tech that seems to be playing better football now after losing its first two games? But now we know Wyoming and Oregon are good.
Yeah.
So maybe those losses weren't as bad as perceived.
Yeah, that's what I was going to lead off with was their resume. I mean, they've been tested so far. They go to Wyoming, they got a 2-point loss in overtime, and look at Wyoming now. I think they're some projections have them, in a New Year's Day bowl. They're 5-1. Their only loss is at Texas. Then they come home, and Fitz, I rewatched the game with Oregon. They were 13th at the time, now up as high as number 8. They gave all the Ducks they gave the Ducks everything they could handle. I mean, that was a very competitive game. I think at the end of the day, the athletes on Oregon ended, won over, and Bo Nix too. And then you go to West Virginia and you lose a 7-point game there. And here's West Virginia, Fitz. They're somehow receiving votes in the top 25. So their only loss is at Penn State. So I think Tech's resume, they're a better team than their record shows. And I do think that they've been tested to some degree, but I also think their wins haven't maybe proven as much. I think that you've figured out more in their losses than you have a little bit in their wins.
True.
But they're really experienced, and that's why they got so much love in the preseason. They have 17 players, Fitz, that logged 20-plus career games played entering the season. 13 players have logged 10 or more career starts. They've got 2 Western Kentucky transfers alone on the offensive line, one of whom is Cole Spencer, who I think is questionable to play on Saturday. That would be a big loss for them because between he and Rusty Stats, who's the new center that they brought in from the portal this year, 101 career games played combined, 81 games started between those two. So, I mean, this is a Texas Tech team that statistically Fitz is pretty even with Kansas State. They're almost even if you go by ESPN's SP Plus rankings, which I know where some people like them, some people don't. Very even. I think K-State's 24th overall and Tech's 26th. Pretty even on offense, pretty even on defense. The biggest disparity between the two is special teams. Go figure. Tech is an elite special teams group this year. Really good punter, really dangerous return men. But yeah, I mean, do you want me to get into? I've kind of hyped the Red Raiders up. Do you want me to keep flowing here and get into where I think maybe K-State can take advantage?
Yeah. I'm because you shared with me before we started this was going to be a good matchup for K-State, and you just convinced me it isn't.
I wanted to build it up so I can tear it down.
Okay.
And I'm Fitz, folks that tune in regularly. I'm the pessimist here of the group on GoPowercat, right? I'm the painful reality guy, the bearer of bad news, and yet there's something about this matchup. I think Kansas State's a terrible matchup for Texas Tech, and here's why. Particularly this year, is even coming off the loss at Oklahoma State, even with Texas Tech seemingly finding their momentum, trying to go on a 3-game Big 12 win streak here against the Wildcats at night, at home in Lubbock, with K-State potentially being without both their starting cornerbacks. This is not the Texas Tech air raid sling it around where you're starting to get nervous about what K-State might let up through the air. They're getting things done on the ground this year. Joey McGuire leaning on a guy like Taj Brooks, who comes in number 5 rusher in America, averaging 6 yards per carry, 4 TDs. But, Baylor, they wore him. I personally think, you come off that game and I'd be questioning whether they wore him out. 31 carries against Baylor, 21 carries against Houston. But Fitz, neither one of those defenses is better than 12th in the conference in rush defense. K-State is made to stop the run. They struggled a little bit with it against a poor rushing attack in Oklahoma State. But I think Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, have a way of scheming against K-State. Similarly to the way I say K-State's a bad matchup for Texas Tech, I think Mike Gundy's proven Oklahoma State's kind of a bad matchup in most years for K-State. And he had a bye week to prep for it. With Texas Tech, they haven't had a bye week. And I think this is a good matchup for K-State's defense that wants to stop a guy like Taj Brooks, who's not a Deuce Vaughn. He's not a dynamic, make you miss kind of guy. He loves contact. He's between the tackles. His longest run on the year, Fitz, is only 38 yards. So he's not going to separate. That's built for what K-State wants to do. And then I think if you flip over to the defensive side too, the offensive side for Kansas State, I went back and rewatched your post-game walk and talk from last year. And one of the things you highlighted on, remember fans, if those of you that forgot, that was the game that K-State ran for 341. And it wasn't necessarily a pretty win, but Adrian Martinez had 171 rushing yards on 12 carries, 14.3 yards per carry for Adrian Martinez. You go through and look at what Texas Tech has done in their losses this year. Andrew Peasley is the quarterback for Wyoming, had 15 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. He's not known as a mobile quarterback. Bo Nix, athletic, not a mobile quarterback, 9 carries for 46 yards. And then Nico Marchiol from West Virginia, their quarterback, 15 carries for 72 yards in their win against Texas Tech. I think all three of those guys, Fitz, except for maybe Marchiol, led their team in rushing. It's a problem for Texas Tech, and Joey McGuire addressed it in the media press conference that he had earlier this week that I listened to. They have a real problem with not being able to contain when they pressure. They allow seams. That's what Adrian Martinez was doing last year. He dropped back, they'd pressure, and then these wide open gaps. They were not assignment sound in how they pressured. That's tailor-made for Kansas State, tailor-made for a guy like Avery Johnson, and honestly, tailor-made for even a guy like Will Howard.
Right.
He can see pocket presence. He can see gaps and take off and run. We saw it even at times in a bad performance for him last week against Oklahoma State. That's the kind of rushing that Will Howard does best, honestly. So again, Fitz, I think that all plays in to K-State's hands. I don't think they need to be, reinvent the wheel as much as K-State fans probably want them to after the performance last week. They can go out, get back to their physical brand, a methodical brand, keep Texas Tech's offense off the field, and let DJ Giddens, Trayshawn Ward, Will Howard, and Avery Johnson do the dirty work with their legs.
Yep. I'm very interested to see how they attack that defense, how they use their quarterbacks. So let me just ask, will Avery Johnson play in this game with some role?
I absolutely would play him, and I expect him to play. I think that it's a matchup that, again, just tailors to what he does. Now, I think they're going to have to sprinkle in some opportunities, as we've been saying all season long and deeper into the preseason over the summer. They've got to find ways to make Avery an honest quarterback to a defense too. I don't think you can just bring him in and have him run and run and run and run and run. Eventually people will catch on. They'll start loading the box. So they've got to find some ways. Colin Klein's got to let Avery throw it a little bit and do it in ways that they feel Avery can not only make the play, but can keep confidence with him as a passer too. But I absolutely would play him this week, and I expect to see him. Fans will be disappointed. I don't think he's going to start as much as the fan base is oddly clamoring for it. But I definitely think this is a tailor-made game to get him involved again.
Let's stay with quarterbacks. Tech's gone through a quarterback change due to injury. What has changed about Tech's offense?
Well, Baron Morton is kind of their prodigal son. Tyler Shook goes down. Yeah, I mean, Tyler Shook goes down with the injury, the Oregon transfer that they had, high expectations for last year. He gets injured. He comes back this year. Didn't play bad by any stretch in the games that he was available before his injury this year, but I don't think he was great. He's definitely a little bit more mobile than Baron Morton, and Chris Kleiman alluded to that in his Tuesday press conference about Baron Morton being more of a pocket presence, and that's why they're kind of leaning more on the run game from the running backs and not just from the quarterback position. But, I like Baron Morton, but this is an offense that hasn't really been they've been methodical in their approach from the ground game and haven't really opened up the pass as much. And I think part of that is Baron Morton being a young passer. He has, I think, 5 or 6 games of experience now under his belt. But some of that was last year at the end of the season in bowl games and stuff, and didn't have, as much preparation as he's had this year. And now this year, kind of the same deal as we saw from Will last year, where they had him prepared, but he wasn't expected to be a guy with Tyler Shook back and, now you're the guy again. So I think they're kind of slowly getting him more involved in the offense. I haven't been overwhelmed with him as a passer, Fitz. They're still a hurry up tempo team. So you're going to see him, get it out of his hands quick and sling it around, but they're not the deep ball team, I think, that maybe fans remember under Cliff Kingsbury or even Matt Wells, where they try and catch you on a deep ball here and there. They're really keeping things, I think, more under 20 yards and again, letting Baron Morton get confidence through the ground game to then open the pass game. But The one thing I will say, regardless of the quarterback fits, is expect to see, and K-State should anticipate, that hurry up style, because while their time of possession is still really low, like bottom 10 in America, that's because that they're one of the quickest teams at the line. I think per play, or per minute, I should say, they're number 2 behind Tennessee in the amount of plays they have per minute. So they want to get up and go just like they always do, but it's a different kind of style. Like I said, they're easing Brien Morton in. And again, that plays into K-State. I think, I heard you on the podcast earlier this week, K-State, we need to see more pressure from Joe Klanderman. We need to see them, try and manage or generate more pressure through schematics. This is a game to do that. Brien Morton's not an elusive guy. They've given up some sacks this year. As I said earlier on in this segment, Cole Spencer might be out for them, who's a reliable tackle for them in Lubbock. So this is a game that I would pressure him and make him more of a passer. Take the running element out of it.
Okay, so let's unravel a few things there that you've said. Special teams are typically Kansas State's pride and joy.
Yeah.
Is this possibly the first game K-State might just lose because they don't match up very well in special teams?
Yeah, I mean, you want to win 2 out of 3 phases to try
Right.
and win a game, right? I as confident as I am in K-State on the offense and defense, I'm not very confident in their special teams right now. And not just because of how they performed this year, but how Texas Tech has performed this year on that side of the ball. They lead the Big 12 with 28.1 yards average on kick returns. They're one of only 2 teams in the conference that have scored a TD, both on punt return and kick return. They've got a kid named, they got Miles Price, and they've got a transfer from Austin P named Dre McCray that is a speedster and really dynamic in that phase of the game. Second in the Big 12 in punt return average. They have a TD there, like I mentioned, and they're number 1 in the Big 12 in their punting average at 48.7 yards. A punter that Joey McGuire thinks is going to play in the NFL. He's a Sunday punter.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel confident in that phase of the ball. They've blocked some kicks too. I think they returned one for a touchdown against Houston, I believe, from when I was going back and reviewing that game. So that's an area I don't want to just chalk up as a loss, Fitz. But I mean, K-State better come dialed in. And the good news, though, Fitz, is that maybe as bad as they've been and the amount of questions that Chris Kleiman has gotten about special teams over the course of the last couple of weeks, maybe everything that happened on Friday night in Stillwater, and again, when it comes to special teams, even beyond Friday night, maybe this is all coming at the right time, because you would think there's no way in hell they will mess up special teams on Saturday night, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay. The other thing you said that really jumped out at me, Tech, we know, likes to go fast.
Yeah.
Well, you now have a true freshman middle linebacker, and you might be using your backup cornerbacks. You might be out both your starting corners. How does that impact K-State? I have fear they're just not going to be lined up right or on time.
Well, and that is one area that I'm going to be interested in seeing how Texas Tech comes out on that first scripted drive and see how much of this they work in. Because Joey McGuire mentioned something in his middle of the week press conference when the question was asked kind of to him, assessing your team, kind of the pros and cons. What do you like from your guys, and what do you think you need to do more of? And on offense, he talked about how much he likes their physical, aggressive approach on the ground. He loves what they're doing in their rushing game. But he said he wants to open up the offense more through play action. That's an area that Austin Romaine and Austin Moore's got to help Austin Romaine with, to really try and be sound and assignment sound. Be patient. Don't over pursue. Don't go on your first instinct. Watch and see. Watch the football. Because if we see Kansas State come out and bite on some of that play action, that could deter my thoughts on this game, right?
Yep.
That's where you could see Brien Morton get into a little bit of a groove, and you can see K-State kind of get all out of sorts. So the safeties are going to have to be assignment sound, and again, not over pursue, be patient in what they see and address it. And the same goes for the middle linebacker in Austin Romaine, because we've seen Chris Kleiman. Kudos to Austin Romaine is what Chris Kleiman said this week, and I agree with him. But also, we've seen and we saw it on Friday night some times where Austin Romaine is still the freshman. So again, he's going to get better with each snap, but he's got to be assignment sound in this one. But Fitz, I will add one more caveat to that, and that is I think the same way Texas Tech could, if they want to, take advantage of a freshman middle linebacker for K-State. You could make the same argument that Will Howard and Colin Klein could do the same thing to Texas Tech, because right now the leading tackler for Texas Tech is a kid named Ben Roberts. He's come out of nowhere through some injuries. He's worked his way up the depth chart, and he is the starter. He's not going anywhere now, but he is a true freshman. And when you watch him, he's really good against the run. He's a big kid, like 6'3", 240, but he's not the most athletic kid. And I still wonder if he could be susceptible to some play action or a better athlete like a Trayshawn Ward or a guy like DJ Giddens that has a little bit more wiggle than I like to give him credit for. That's an area that K-State could do the exact same thing that Texas Tech wants to do as well.
Okay, a couple questions to wrap us up. Does K-State contain Taj Brooks? Keep him 80 or fewer yards?
I'm going to say yes. I thought long and hard on that just because I think I like Taj Brooks. He's a guy that K-State fans, K-State offered him. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know about what they thought of him out of high school. He's a self-made guy, like Jalen Hutchings on their defensive line, not guys that were, huge recruits. They've made it for themselves. And so part of me thinks, as they've done the last 2-3 weeks, they're going to run him until he can't run anymore. So part of me thinks he might get over 80 just on the amount of touches and confidence they have in him right now. But I like K-State. I think he's going to have to earn it to get over 80.
Does K-State win?
I think K-State does. I don't think it's going to be a landslide. Dare I say, our message boards still might not be pleased on Sunday morning. I mean, it's going to be a hard-fought one that might not look overly impressive, right? It could be UCF, Oklahoma State material, even Missouri material. But again, I like how K-State matches up against Texas Tech. And I think if they can kind of weather the storm that happens in Lubbock, that happened, quite frankly, last year in the second and third quarters against Texas Tech, they can weather the drives and the momentum waves. I think K-State can get back to its brand of football on offense and defense, figure some things out on special teams, not let anything happen there. They can escape and get out with a win in Lubbock and kind of get back to their ways for a huge game against TCU.
He is Ryan Wallace. He's our recruiting expert, dropping some crystal balls, not particularly.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
For K-State. We go check that out. And of course, he helps us out with our game coverage as we preview K-State and Texas Tech. Wally, thank you so much.
Thanks, Fitz.
That's it for this segment of the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. On the other side, we're going to talk to Will Howard. We're going to drop in the full Tuesday interview for Will Howard, in part because you probably want to hear from the quarterback, and also that means less Ryan Gilbert, and we're all in favor of that. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by our great friends at Robbins Motor Company. I'm Fitz. We've got 2 segments of this show behind us. One more to go, and that's Ryan Gilbert to talk about sports betting and how the conference stacks up this weekend. Only 5 games in the league, so it'll be a little bit shorter with Gills, but I also know this. You probably want to hear from the QB. What does Will Howard say about what went wrong last week, his mentality and the offensive approach going into this week? Well, the media got him for a little bit on Tuesday at the press conference, and we're going to give you about 4.5 minutes of Will Howard to discuss everything that went wrong and right and what needs to change for the Texas Tech game. Saturday night at 6 in Lubbock, but your reminder, we're sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. K-State fans, visit the Robbins Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat location on Anderson Avenue in Manhattan for an exciting test drive. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. And here we go with the final segment. Here is QB1, and QB1 for the near future, certainly, probably for the rest of the season. Here's what Will Howard had to say earlier this week to the media.
I mean, I came in, got some extra throws on Sunday, and other than that, it's just been the normal routine. Can't change anything about what we're doing. Obviously had an off game last week. I feel like, we just kind of had a slip up, obviously. Have to clean some things up. But it's not, the sky's not falling. I feel like, especially offensively, we were playing pretty good football up until that point. But, some of the mistakes that we were making and things kind of came a little bit into culmination and just kind of ate at us a little bit. And it kind of, I don't want to say kind of came all out at the same time, but like, that was the worst I've played in since my freshman year probably. But I mean, I feel like up until that point, this year I feel like I've been playing, well. I don't think I've been playing my best, but personally, and I think as a team we could all say the same thing. So, nothing's changing drastically, but definitely a mindset switch a little bit. Kind of a snap back to reality a little bit, and just got to focus on the inside noise and not the outside noise.
How difficult was it to go back and watch that?
It was tough just because a lot of the things that happened in that game were on us, right? It was just in our control. I say it over and over to the guys. It's, I truly believe that, there's no team out there that can beat us. We're the only ones that can do that. And if we're not playing to our standard, then anyone can beat us. So, we just gotta get back to what we were doing and get back to having fun with it a little bit. I think we need to just play a little more free.
What's your number one objective coming into this week?
Shoot, I don't know. I don't know if I have a one objective I can put my finger on. Obviously is to win, to win the day, to win the week. We're trying to have more of a 1-0, process-based 1 week season mindset this week. And not look ahead to anything else, not look behind, just focus on the task at hand. And I think that's, the biggest thing is just winning every day and winning every rep and everything you can. Just be the best you can be in that moment.
What does focusing on the inside noise instead of the outside noise mean to you?
To me, it's just, I guess, focusing on the people that matter. And there's a lot of things that even coming into the season, good or bad, that were said about us, that doesn't matter, and that isn't stuff that we need to be tuned into. And obviously people are free to say what they want and do and what they please, but to the people in this building, the voices that really matter are us, and the people that we need to listen to are the people that we love and we care about and that are in this building, and that we have that strong bond with. And like I said, and people can say what they want, and they're free to do that, and bring it on. But we just got to remember what is important, and remember that the people in this building are the people that are gonna take the. We determine what we're gonna do, and if we listen to anything outside of that, then that's not gonna help us at all.
Is this an opportunity for you? It seems like you guys have thrived kind of backs against the wall in the past.
Yeah, I think it's great. Obviously it's not the way we wanted to do that, but I think it kind of reminds us that anything can happen, and that we have to still have that same hunger that we did, especially last year. I feel like we were the underdogs in every sense of the word, and had that fire every game, and I think we got to get back to that and just remember that that's what got us there, and playing free and loving the game and having fun, and not putting so much pressure on ourselves, and listening to the expectations that people have for us, because that doesn't matter.
We go from Will Howard to Ryan Gilbert, one quarterback to another. The quarterback of my sports betting team arrives here today, right now, in front of your faces. That's Ryan Gilbert. Gills, how you doing? You look good.
I'm good. I feel great. I think you need a new quarterback, though.
You're okay. You're okay. You just threw some interceptions, 5. to start the season, but it's okay. Let's get into this. We're short on time. West Virginia -2.5 at Houston. So West Virginia's gone from picked last in the Big 12 to being a road favorite. My, how times have changed for Neil Brown.
Yeah, Neil Brown has sort of cooled down the conversation revolving his hot seat heading into the year. And Dana Holgorsen, though, going up against his former team, that's a coach that kind of was on the hot seat heading into the year. And I don't know if that's been cooled off at all, but it should be an interesting angle just with those two coaches in this game. But West Virginia likes to rush the football. We know that they've ran it on average 45 times a game this season, and Houston gives up over 4.5 yards per carry on defense. And so I like West Virginia in this game. I think they're going to control the football on the ground, but is this going to be a game where Dana Holgorsen wants to step up against his former team? We'll see, but I think West Virginia is a safe bet just because of how good Mountaineers' season has been compared to the Cougars.
I would agree with that. Cincinnati is a 5-point favorite at home against Iowa State. Cincinnati -5. I'm a little surprised by this. I know the Bearcats are at home, but Iowa State's been playing better. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Iowa State's been respectable. I think that's a good word to use for the Cyclones. They haven't been good, but won 2 of their last 3 games, and maybe they've got something going. You've seen some good things from Iowa State, whereas Cincinnati, they haven't won a Big 12 game yet. It's been rather ugly, and so I'd rather go with Iowa State in this game. Just looking at the eye test, doesn't it feel like Iowa State's just played a little bit better? And we've always talked about the Big 12 just having some awful teams. I think Cincinnati's one of them. Iowa State maybe in that middle tier if they want to be.
Yep. Well, if you can't figure that out, and try this one on, TCU had just lost badly at Iowa State, is a 6-point favorite over BYU. The game's in Fort Worth, so yeah, but I don't think the odds makers can figure out TCU right now. I feel like BYU might win this outright, but I'm going to defer to your expertise.
I think I like BYU here as well, not just to cover, but to win it outright. Playing on the road, of course, a long travel isn't going to be easy, but they've got to be used to that by now, right? It's not going to be anything new playing, a couple 4 or 5 hours by plane. That's probably not that long, but anyways, TCU's not going to have Chandler Morris in this game, and so I don't feel comfortable betting on the Horned Frogs here. BYU's going to have to rely on its passing game. Pretty much a non-existent rushing attack for the Cougars, but if BYU can get it going through the air like they have this season, I see a perfect recipe for a road upset here for BYU.
K-State was a 11, 12-point favorite at Oklahoma State last week and lost. Kansas wanders into Stillwater on Saturday. They're a 3-point favorite. So I think Vegas is showing Oklahoma State a little respect there after what they did, but I'm sorry, K-State fans. I think KU rolls Oklahoma State. What do you think?
I disagree with you on this one, Fitz. And without Jalen Daniels, who's doubtful as of right now as we're recording this, KU's shown that that's a team that may not be able to get things going on offense without their quarterback. And so we saw some good things against Kansas State. Speaking of Oklahoma State, we saw some good things. Obviously, Kansas State really shot itself in the foot in that game, but you've got to give credit to where it's due. And it seems like Mike Gundy may have found a way to turn around the season. Obviously, there's still question marks there. Maybe it was the players in the locker room. Maybe Gundy didn't have anything to do with it. But I gained some respect for Oklahoma State after that game on Friday. And so I'm actually going to go with the Cowboys. This is back-to-back home games for them. That game against K-State, they quite honestly, Oklahoma State could have won by 3 or 4 touchdowns if they were able to convert some of those red zone trips. And so I like Oklahoma State in this game. I think that might be the more talented bunch between the two teams. But when you look at maybe the state of the programs, you're going to give KU the nod and stuff like that. But Oklahoma State certainly has the talent to win back-to-back games here.
I'll say this about the quarterback situation for Kansas. I know Alan Bowman played well enough to lead Oklahoma State to a win last week, but I'm still not impressed by him. I think Jason Bean's still a better quarterback than Alan Bowman, and I don't know. We'll see how that one plays out, but I have a feeling KU's going to win that. Tech is a 1.5-point favorite at home against Kansas State. Boy, we're supposed to be the experts in Kansas State, and it's hard to read them. It's hard to figure out what's going on. I think K-State will get it done. but I really do value your opinion because it'll be wrong.
Right? Whatever I do, go the opposite, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This game is tough, and you would like Kansas State to bounce back. Everything that we've sort of, we were on the team on Tuesday. Everybody seemed a little angry. Chris Kleiman was rather short to start off his press conference, right? So this is a perfect time for his team to bounce back. But you look at what happened on the field, man, it's tough to put your money on Kansas State. It really is. Perfect opportunity to go out and get a win on the road, but you are on the road. It's a night game. Not going to be an easy place to play. You're sitting in your hotel room all day long. So I like reasons to bet on Texas Tech. I also like reasons to bet on Kansas State. Now, I think if Howard does go out and struggle in this game, you do have more of a reason to have a QB controversy on your hands. I don't think we're there quite yet. Even if he struggles, I'm still riding with Howard, but he is not out of the woods. I mean, he has struggled. He's thrown an interception, right? Fits in every game. And so I can't be wrong if I don't give you a pick, right? Does that work?
That's just wrong because it's your job to give me a pick. Right.
I guess, I don't know. To be honest with you, Fitz, I haven't given my pick yet in our weekly betting article that'll go up on Thursday. And so I'm teeter-tottering here on both sides. So I guess
we'll let you off the hook. That way you can't be wrong.
Right. Is that okay with you?
No, it's not, but that's okay. We'll talk about it at your employee evaluation. That'll probably take place at a bar. Thank you, Ryan Gilbert. Much appreciated. And that will do it for this week's edition of the Powercat Pregame Podcast, brought to you by Robbins Motor Company. I'm Fitz, and I always give you that one thing to watch. And usually this pertains to something that will impact the outcome of the game. Kansas State handled the line of scrimmages. Will Howard not throw interceptions? That type of thing. But this time, let's back up and let's just simply watch for this. Look for new personnel. Who did Chris Kleiman and his coaches turn to maybe add some spice, add a little flavor to this team? Will Avery Johnson get to play some? Will there be a role for the freshman quarterback? We saw it at Missouri. And what's odd about it is I feel like the coaches feel like that was a failed experiment. It didn't work well. Well, those of us who watched the game kind of thought it did work better than what they were doing, and maybe they should have done it more. And maybe this is a game when the quarterback run game comes into play enough that they'll find a role for Avery Johnson. But will he be the only young or less proven player to step on the field? That's something to monitor as the game goes on. Of course, I'll have my 5 keys to victory and my actual game prediction at GoPowercat later in the week. But for now, that's going to be a wrap on this preview of the Cats and Red Raiders in Lubbock at 6 p.m. on Saturday. K-State will be home next week to play TCU in another night game. Every Big 12 game so far this season has been played at night. And when they do return home, I'll be able to say this safely. I will see you at the Bill.